you're just not going to get away from struggle in life. You know, like you're going to every single person's going to have them. And I don't really like struggle that much, you know? But when I get into struggle, I just kind of got to the point where it's like, I need to manage it, you know? And so, yeah, I started, I would do things, I tried meditation. I've invested in counselors in my life. I've invested in mentors. I've invested in seminars, reading, things that I could do. Like I got really inspired by Napoleon Hill, and I was reading, not Rich Dad Poor Dad, but Think and Grow Rich. And then I really got into his book, Outwitting the Devil, because I feel like that's actually a total masterpiece, Outwitting the Devil. And it didn't actually get published until like the 90s or the 2000s, and it was like a hidden manuscript and stuff. And it's like he interviews the devil, and the devil has to tell him the truth, and the devil basically explains how to outwit him. So there's a really interesting story in the dialogue and stuff, and he used all those lessons that he had learned through his journey, and all the people he interviewed, and tried to understand what it meant to create success and achievement. So I was inspired by that. I was listening to those books over and over again, and trying to apply those things to my life, and try to like change my beliefs, because I realized like there's so many things that I believe that aren't actually true, and like, because you're taught things your whole life, and the world shapes your beliefs, and the people that you're around shape your beliefs, and like not all those beliefs are actually true. And so like when you start to actually realize, you start to get broader exposure, and you start to listen to more people who have explored these topics, you realize there's so much depth to almost every topic, And as you dig in, it changes the way you believe. And like I knew that I needed to overcome some of my limiting beliefs. And so like that's always been that's been the quest now, is like continue to overcome these beliefs, and then like use the new understanding to grow.
No, completely agree, and understand that whole concept of things that you maybe are being taught or trained or just absorbing because of your environment. You don't realize that maybe some of it's not healthy or the right things based on where you want your path and your journey. It might be the right thing for someone else, maybe, but just not for you. And so as you're getting into books, you're changing kind of the trajectory of some of the future. This is at times that are wrapping down with your time at OST, I assume. What's next in that journey and phase for you and your wife?
Well, I got fired from OST.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, the patient needed the medicine. I'm glad I went through it. It was very painful, but I was very disruptive at that point in my life. I read so many books. I saw the business for what it was. I didn't agree with certain things, and I was butting heads with a couple people, and it was a good thing. They needed to let me go. I got a severance out of that created a runway for me to work on growing Augusto. And I was already working on another side venture. It was like a mobile app. It was a point of sale system. My wife wanted it because she was doing so many garage sales at that point. So she wanted an app to run garage sales. So I built that thing for her. And I was like on this journey again of like learning, building a mobile app and launching a mobile app, running a mobile app as a SaaS business. And then when I left and I had that severance, we were up at the lake, and I was like, the first few days were, it's like a grieving process, right? It's like you're angry, and then you're sad, and then, talking to friends and having people up. And then it was like great. That was like one of the best months of my life after I got over that, because it was like I'm living at the lake at the end of the summer, and I don't have any place to go. Like I just
except for a cruise on the boat. Yep.
Yeah, totally. And then like I also like started like leaning back into my network in the fall, and I started like going and talking to people, and what are they doing, and like how can I start collaborating with them. And I had this vision for a consulting business, and how I wanted to build it, and how I thought we could serve the market, and how I think we could be different. And, so I just was working on that problem, and I was trying to attract people. And a couple of people, Joel and Jim, I had done multiple like side venture businesses with Joel Ross, my partner in those businesses. And he and I were kind of a yin and a yang. He was much more practical and, more operational, and he was a really good developer too. So he was able to get stuff done. He would take a lot of stuff that I would say and he'd work on it, and we'd work on it in the evening together. So I worked on a lot of side business with Joel. So I called him up, and then I had another friend that we both had worked at Crow. All three of us had worked at Crow together. His name was Jim Becker. And I always loved Jim, man. Jim's best quality is that he's the most friendly person in the world. Like, no one that I know does not like Jim. And, sometimes I need people like that around me.
Yeah.
And so we always got along great. We played soccer together. We could compete on things together. We were in the trenches on very competitive situations. And so I called both those guys. They knew each other, and I invited them up to the cottage, and I took them out on the boat. And I dropped the anchor in the middle of the boat, and I said, boys, we're going to figure out how to grow a business together, or you guys got to swim back, And we did. We figured it out. That's 9 years ago now, That's 9 years, and we're still going. But then I had, continued to reach out to my network and trying to find ways to get to market, try to find ways to get clients. And there's a whole nother set of stories beyond that moment of being in the boat and deciding with those two guys that we're going to do a business together.
Yeah. And one of the things that I noticed, just Augusto, on your website, you got pictures, obviously, of your team and the leadership team and some of the individuals you're talking about. There's also a picture of you guys sitting around a conference table, and you have EOS leadership books on the table. Is that something that you guys implemented right away as an organization, or later on, throughout the 9-year journey?
It was later on. I think we've been doing EOS now for maybe close to 6 years.
6 years.
The first 3 years were inventing things and trying to pull from lessons we had learned being in part of other companies. And, we thought we knew a lot, and we had ways of running meetings. We had ways of organizing, but we started hitting ceilings, and we were getting into we'd spend half of our time debating how we should actually operate and do things. How should we run our leadership meeting? How should we run our quarterly meeting? How should, what do we do with an annual meeting? And we just everyone had all these conflicting ideas, and it was creating all these debates around how we should actually do these things. And it was just a waste of time. And it created tension between the owners. Then we had brought on another partner too. His name was Marty. And it just created a lot of tension. And so we finally got to the stage where it's I'm reading books. And so I'm kind of focusing on we're struggling with this problem. People had turned me on to Traction and Gino Wickman. And so I read all those books. And I think the Get a Grip book was the one that actually kind of crystallized EOS for me, because it was related to kind of the work we were doing. Mm-hmm. And then I said, let's start self-implementing this thing, So we start self-implementing it, and it started making a difference, but we hit ceilings again. And then we're back into debating, how should we implement EOS? And then I basically said, we're going to hire an implementer. Mm-hmm. And we did that for 2 years as a leadership team. And now we don't really debate how to run the company anymore. We just do it. We just run the operating system.
I think that last word is what I was curious about, is it's the same people, right? It's the same vision. Potentially that shifted a little bit, but you guys are working on the same kind of problem, looking at the same outcome, but now you have a system of how to solve some of those problems in more of a defined way. It's not rocket science, but it's a process, right? And sometimes you just need to go back to our systems, whether it's in business and in family or, personal health and things like that. Sometimes there's the systems of habits and things like that. Are those broken? Are we actually following them or not? That really intrigued me. And so, yeah, thanks for walking through that. And then you mentioned your wife was doing garage sales, and I want to back up a little bit to her a little bit in this whole story, and how she was reading books with you, and she was looking for software from you that you guys worked on in collaboration on something. Is she in the entrepreneur journey? You met Holly. Is she in an entrepreneur journey as well?
Yeah, she's fully entrepreneurial at this stage. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting. Her journey, I mean, she grew up on the other side of the state. Her parents, worked in auto factories. And so, she wasn't exposed to entrepreneurialism. She got much more exposed to it by being married to me and dealing with the things that I was going through. But she also saw opportunities, and, she's got a good head on her shoulders. She had worked for Herman Miller for 10 years. She was in the marketing team there and the doing project management. And then she stayed home with our kids for 9 years. And then she went back to Hayworth after I left OST. And we were like, we were living in this cottage and we loved it, but like we didn't want to sell it initially. So the next summer, to make money, we said, well, let's start doing Airbnb. And so we Airbnb'd the cottage because we couldn't be there because she was working more. Our kids were also getting to that stage where they were getting a little bit more involved in school activities and stuff. So we kind of saw that it was like we were going to be there less. And so we did the Airbnb thing, and we still used the cottage, but we didn't have as much time there. But she became a super host during that journey.
Oh, nice.
And people just loved it because she's really good at decor and the decorations and the whole like experience around a space. And so she kind of started realizing that she's good at that. And her friends started telling her she's really good at that stuff too. And then the year after, we decided to sell the cottage because we were both reading all these real estate books. And she was like, I kind of on fire for real estate. I want to run some of these properties, and I think I can create really good experiences for people. And so we sold the cottage, and we took that money and we ended up buying 2 duplexes and a long-term rental in Grand Rapids and Jenison. And that was a great experience for us. It was really sad to sell the cottage. It was very heart-wrenching, but we did it because we thought, like, we set a goal. We said, like, in 5 years, like, we'll be in a better position and we'll buy a house on a lake, And so we started working on that together. And she was working at Hayworth part-time, raising our family, and then we bought these properties, and then she kind of took over the property management initially. And we thought, well, we'll eventually get property managers, but let's experience what it's like to run these houses, And so she did that, and like even when we were at the cottage, I was continuing to expose her to like working with contractors. I was like, I don't have time. This is Holly. She's gonna manage this project with you. And then she got really comfortable managing other people to do the kind of work you need to do to improve a home. And so she just started gaining all these experiences, super host, working with contractors, selling our cottage, buying 3 houses, and starting to run those houses and get tenants in there and start cash flowing them and all that kind of stuff, right? So she was just getting exposed to all these experiences during that time.